frankly, if I was Joe Biden, I'd go to Beijing. That if he sees Xi Jinping before the November 6th election, Trump will immediately say, you see, the Democrats are soft on China. Well, if Trump wins and Biden meets Xi Jinping, everybody will say, what's the point?
Now, here are the 10 questions very quickly. Require only one word answer. Number one, who will likely win the 2024 election?
喺睇片之前，大家記得分享、讚好同訂閱灼見名家，最緊要撳埋呢個鐘仔，咁你就唔會錯過我哋嘅最新影片。
There is no question whatsoever that the US-China geopolitical contest will accelerate over the next 10 years. Because there's a rock-solid consensus in Washington, D.C., that the United States has about 10 years to try and stop China from becoming number one. Because there's a fairly reasonable calculation that if the Chinese economy continues to grow, and if it becomes number one, then the world changes. So in some ways, you could argue it's rational on their part to try and stop China. Although I would also argue that the means they're using are irrational. So the contest will definitely accelerate. But you also ask, will it lead to war? And here, on balance, I'm reasonably optimistic that there will be no all-out war, because in an all-out war between two nuclear powers, there is no winner and a loser. There's a loser and a loser. And you notice that the Biden administration started its first 2 years taking a very hard line on China because they wanted to show that they were as macho as the Trump administration. But I think when things got really difficult, then they said, oh, maybe we should pause and try to find a way of at least keeping a certain degree of balance. And that's why, as you know, Jake Sullivan just recently came to Beijing. So there will be an effort on both sides to try and avoid an outright war. But of course, the one lesson of history is that mistakes do happen. And that's what we need to worry about. By the way, the sad part is that I think when Joe Biden writes his memoirs, one sentence I don't think he'll be happy writing is that I understand he's the first US president since Jimmy Carter not to have visited China. I mean, to be fair, it was partly because of COVID. In 2021, 22, he couldn't visit China because of COVID. But even since then, it's such a tragedy that he's not been able to go. And I can understand, by the way, as a diplomat for 33 years, the fact that Joe Biden still wants to meet Xi Jinping is a very good thing. Every time leaders meet and talk face-to-face, we should encourage it. In fact, it should happen every day without any question, without any hesitation. But unfortunately, domestic politics in the United States made life impossible for Biden because he couldn't afford to be seen to be soft on China. If you're seen to be soft on China, you lose elections in the United States. And so I think his challenge now is that if he sees Xi Jinping before the November 6th election, Trump will immediately say, you see, the Democrats are soft on China. So he's got to wait till after November 6th. But then if, for example, if Trump wins and Biden meets Xi Jinping, everybody will say, what's the point? It's a lame duck meeting, right? Even though in theory it's always good for leaders to meet. So I think the Biden administration is caught in a really impossible position because if he tries to meet Xi before the elections, he may undermine Kamala. And if he meets Xi after the election, then people will say, what's the point?
Do you really see there's a possibility that Biden will visit China?
I would actually encourage him to do so.
To do so, okay.
Of course. I
But
mean,
of course, the media...
at the end of the day, I can tell you this. The one good thing about going to China is that the one country that knows how to lay out the red carpet and make you feel really, really important is China.
Yeah.
So from your opinion, you just said Biden's current move to meet Xi Jinping will be a dangerous move in their internal politics. So the question is, why? What do you think Washington and Beijing can get from such a meeting, since Biden will actually leave Washington in quite a month? Thank you.
In some ways, I mean, it'd be very, very difficult for President Joe Biden to deliver any long-term promises to President Xi's counterpart, because he's going to step down, you know. Now, but despite that, if they want to meet, we should encourage it. Definitely encourage it, because every time leaders meet, especially leaders of competing powers, even if they can remove misunderstandings with each other, it'd be very, very useful. So, for example, the reason why relations between US and China stabilized in the second half of the Biden administration is because of the breakthrough meeting in Bali, you know. And I met President Jokowi of Indonesia actually 1 or 2 days before that meeting, and I told President Jokowi, if you can arrange a good meeting between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping, the world will thank you. And he said to me, don't worry, Kishore, I've given them the nicest room in Bali for the meeting. And sure enough, by the way, they had a very good meeting, but unfortunately, a balloon came along. And the balloon destroyed it, as you know. But nonetheless, despite that, I'm a great believer in face-to-face meeting between leaders. And I would say, if they're going to meet again, I would certainly encourage the meeting. And by the way, they can meet in Laos, they can meet in Brazil, they can also meet in Peru at the APEC meeting. So there are 3 opportunities. Plus, frankly, if I was Joe Biden, I'd go to Beijing.
Special segment.
Now, here are the 10 questions very quickly. Require only 1 word answer, or yes or no, or 1 sentence explanation. Number 1, who will likely win the 2024 election?
I can choose one only, right?
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
中意名家分析，記得俾 like 同埋分享，支持同訂閱卓見名家，最緊要撳埋呢個鐘仔，咁就唔會錯過我哋嘅新片。